Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. My name is Niels Tudor Winter and I am the creator, editor and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent, non-commercial podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. Some time ago I had my first request to be on my show. This is a small milestone for any startup podcast. Founder and director of the Israeli grant consultancy company Enspire, Yoram Bar-Zeev, asked if he could join the show and share his knowledge on how to fold out the research input for the excellence section in a Horizon Europe proposal. Of course, he received a big yes from me, and I'm happy he reached out, because this conversation became a very nice talk about how to develop the excellence section from scratch. The key focus in this talk is on what the evaluators are paying attention to, what you have a big influence on yourself when developing the text, and how to sharpening the text and narrative. Please enjoy. The Grant. Welcome to the Grant podcast, the EU funding podcast. I normally say when I start these episodes that it's the one and only, and I should probably stop that because it's gets a little repetitive. Anyways, and sometimes it sounds a little bit like I'm not welcoming that others should do anything, that I should be the only animal on the savannah. That's not. I would love to have tons of other podcasts that I could exchange with. So, anyways, anyone who'd like to make a podcast about this, please do. I would love to join you. Now, today I'm having another guest episode. As frequent listeners know, I have started this initiative off with timeline series, and then I'm shifting now in between those steps in the timeline series and getting some guests on board to fill in nice and diverse content in the different sections that I have in my podcast universe. Today we are in the consultants corner. I have engaged or reached out. Actually, no, you know what, guys? This is the first person that reached out to me. Ha! This is
correct.
Yeah, but it's fantastic. And I'm not going to leave any one of you in oblivion anymore. Yoram, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Of course. And before we continue any further and you present yourself, how do I pronounce your name correctly? Yoram, is that correct?
Yoram is fine.
Good. So, please present yourself for the dear listeners.
Well, my name is Yoram Bar-Zeev. I'm running the Enspire Science consultancy firm. We are located in Tel Aviv in Israel. I'm working on EU grants for over 2 decades by now, actually starting since 1996. And I've gained experience in pretty much all the range of EU funding grants for research and development. And I believe that's the basis for me being here today.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Israel, that's nice. How's the weather?
Hot.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. It's today it's actually extremely hot for the season. So it's unusual already, but still hot weather here.
I have a contact in one of my old colleagues from P&O. She works for one of the universities now. We can share that afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
There's any synergies for you anyways.
As you probably, the Israeli universities are very much busy and involved in EU funding, EU grants and EU research. So
yeah, I think it's social sciences and health. I think there's a lot to do with. Now, I'll get back to you with that because I don't remember which university it is. Could you shortly, what is your key capacity on EU R&D proposals as a consultant? Do you have any sort of leg where you have the most heavyweight idea development or full proposal development or implementing or?
Well, actually,
research part?
Yeah, we have gained experience in pretty much all the angles of these grants, including the pre-award phase and the post-award phase. But I can say that one of our favorite areas and where we exhibit our expertise in, let's say, in the recent decade is the ERC, European Research Council grants. But and we have a lot of activity over there, but it's not limited to that. Definitely, there are some special, unique challenges over there in the ERC because it's an unstructured grant, and there isn't a list of questions and things that you need to follow in order to prepare a highly competitive grant. But definitely, it's doable, and we have focused on that, and we have a lot of success over there. But we are, as I said, we are active also in the other areas, so covering all ranges.
Okay, that's good. So do you have a sort of research leaning capacity side? Or
yeah.
So
definitely.
Thanks. Enspire Science.
Yeah.
Is it your company? Are you?
It's my company. We are 15 people today. The team is
it's nice.
Consists of 15 people, divided into scientific teams. We have exact sciences team, we have life sciences team, and social sciences and humanities team, and some, of course, administration and project management around that. Another team for that. And what we do is we are working on these grants, training and consulting and managing. We're also coordinating collaborative projects. So we have this capacity as well in the project. And actually, it's not my first company that I'm involved in this area. It's we were previously known for being part of Beacon Tech. But this changed in 2017, and since then, it's Enspire Science.
Okay.
So that's the company.
And when did you start the company? How old are you?
The Enspire Science started in 2017, but the original company, the Beacon Tech, started back in 2003.
And so you had 20 years of experience there. So did you do this work within the field before 2003?
Actually, yes. Beforehand, I was working in high-tech companies in Israel.
Okay.
And this is where I actually I was exposed to these EU grants, starting in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
But I work on these grants under the capacity of the startup companies which I worked in. Somewhere around 2002, I think it was, I stopped working over there, and I started doing this as my main course of action.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Now, so we will now move into the content part here, what we're supposed to talk about today. So you can see this, dear listeners, as a kind of a service in relation to the timeline series, where I cover different phases of the proposal process, from basic idea to submission. And I've been going through that, as some of you know, where it's genetic episodes, where it's quite, some of them are quite schematic, but it just goes through things slowly, going through it to make sure that everybody can go through to an episode and check. Now, what I don't have in those episodes are more in-depth fold out of what the work entails, or in-depth layers of especially the proposal writing, of the content part. So for the content part, for the excellence, I had Marie Proteau, which is a private consultant also, and she's an evaluator, but she's not, and she's an evaluator, and she's a consultant that is shaping the text up. So she knows how to go through it, and she gave very nice examples and very nice guidance to you guys. But what I've been looking for after that was someone who actually, like a researcher or someone who actually sits and create from the bottom, so to say, from the idea,
Right.
create the text around that. So that's what we have here today, Yoram. That's you. You reached yourself, and it was it fitted perfectly well with what I sort of intended with this part of it. So it's very nice. Today we will talk about how to fold out the excellence section, how to shape it up, the basic text, and build it up. So, and the funny thing is that for anybody of you who doesn't know anything about how you make podcasts, you make rundowns. A rundown is basically a bullet list where you create a list of what you're supposed to talk about with the guest, and then you have some keywords. And normally I do that myself, but Yoram he did it for me. You did it for me. Thanks for that. So we will just slowly go through, because they're very nice headlines and keywords. So we just slowly go through from the top. So you start off with a sort of statement. Actually, grant writing is not academic writing nor business oriented writing. So maybe you qualify that yourself.
That's correct. Since I'm doing a lot of training, we believe, and that experience shows that if you train right the applicants, then eventually they will end up with better, more competitive applications. And because I'm so used to training, that's why I came up with this list. It was easy for me because it's one of the topics that I know it's very important to make sure that the excellence section is put right, and that's the background for this list. Now, regarding this first headline, grant writing is not academic writing nor business-oriented writing. This is stems from a very typical thing that we see in our daily work. A lot of people applying to these grants, usually coming from the academia, but it's not limited to that, are actually trying to present what they do in the grant application according to what they are used to. If they're coming from the academia, usually it looks like an academic paper. Mm-hmm. And if they are coming from the industry, from companies, then it will look something like a business plan or a business-oriented document. And it's important to remember that grant applications is something that it's neither that or that. And we need to adjust what we do to what the grant is actually looking for, or better say, what the evaluators are expected to read in your application. And this is the key point here. Keep the reviewers in mind, because most of the grants, especially the European grants, are highly competitive. And if you want to get a grant, the most important people are the people that are going to read and check and assess and evaluate your proposal. So you have to keep them in mind and write the application according to their expectations.
And this is a square root of the nice people that I've been having on board. So, and it's important to repeat this again and again and again and knock it into people's heads, because it's correct what you started off saying. The academics, they write it like an academic paper, and the business guys, they try to write it as a business proposal or something like this.
Correct.
And then you sit and as a consultant, and you need to write up against something totally different, which is the template of the European Commission, and with all the background knowledge of what they would need, also the unset things and so on and so forth. So it's extremely correct what you say, and I will continue to hammer this into people's head with you today and with other guests onwards, that the evaluators, for Christ's sake, the evaluators.
That's true. And actually, I was an evaluator myself. I've evaluated dozens of proposals for the European Commission in the past. I stopped doing that a few years ago, but I know how it looks from the other side. So it's part of the experience that I'm sharing here. Mm. And there are some things that we need to keep in mind about these evaluators before digging into the let's say, the bits and pieces of the excellence section. Mm-hmm. And we need to keep in mind that the first thing, it may sound odd or funny, but we need to keep in mind that they are human beings. And they might be tired while reading your application. They might not be fully in focus when reading your application. They may be influenced by all sorts of things, and they may have some kind of emotional feedback, which I'm going to discuss soon again about when reading your application. Now, some of these factors are not something that you can actually control. But if you want them on your side when reading your application, you have to keep this in mind. Mm-hmm. And you need to make your application sharp and to the point and exactly according to what they expect. And it's not always easy to find out exactly what they expect. Mm-hmm. But we need to keep this in mind. Another thing to remember is that they may not read the entire application. So again, we need to gear it up. We need to shape it up according to what we expect they are going to read. So it all goes back to the point where you need to think about the reviewers and you want them on your side when doing that. And for that matter, you need to study exactly what the grant that you are applying to is expecting you to do. Usually there is a lot of documentation for that. You have the templates from the European Commission. There are background information which I'm going to maybe discuss later on. Most of the grants, especially the collaborative projects and most of the grants on the Horizon Europe are following a structure, meaning there is a form that you need to fill in and there are leading questions in the form. So it's important to follow that. In ERC, it's a bit more complex because in ERC, it's an unstructured grant. And there aren't really leading questions over there. So it can be more complex and more complicated to craft a competitive grant over there, but it's doable as well. So that's the first point, I think, making sure that you are writing a grant application, not an academic paper and not a business-oriented writing. Just to give you an example, and it's kind of a common example, is the issue of background. For example, in many academic papers, in order to convey a message that you know what you are talking about, meaning although you are speaking to your audience, you start off by presenting a background, and sometimes it tends to be a long background text.
Yeah.
Now, in grant writing, this is not a recommended practice. Because the main thing you want is that once the reviewer opens your application, you want them to know as soon as possible exactly what you are talking about. Mm-hmm. You don't want to bore them with 5, 6, 7 pages of background information before getting to the objectives.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a classic case of setting up, let's say, the stage for grant application.
I think working with the ERC, there you will see that much more probably all the time compared to if you work Horizon Europe, Pillar 2 proposals, let's say energy technology related proposal, innovation action, because there the consultant would normally write the first 2 pages for the group. So you wouldn't even have, you might get some input from the partners for the intro, but you would structure it. So it's, but here I guess you get the stuff from the researchers, and then you have to turn everything upside down.
That's true. This is a practice of working in a collaborative team, collaborative project. And I always say, first of all, collaboration is very important for the research, and it's very important to present collaborative work. However, when you write the application, it's okay to collect information for the partners. Actually, you must do that. But I really think that only a single person or a very small team of people will actually write the application, because you need to balance the inputs. You need to make sure they are actually contributing to the messages that you want to convey. You want to have a single voice in the application. You don't want to have surprises down the line because you simply patch the inputs together. And again, you want the reviewer on your side, meaning to understand exactly what you want in the front.
Yeah. It's sometimes for private consultants, you run into the issue of time. If you might have too many proposals on your hand for the same deadlines, and then you simply, then it's the human side on the behalf of the consultant, so to say. Then they are the ones that are under pressure, and then it starts to can get messy because they need people to help with writing, and then they don't have the time to read things through, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it can happen. But I can tell you from experience that we are not letting this happen, and we are also fully engaging the researchers in the process, because our strong belief, and based on just on pure experience, is that especially in the vast majority of grants under Horizon Europe, they are being evaluated by experts in the field, meaning they are going to have experts, people with the right background to evaluate this. And in order to be competitive, you need to speak the language, and you need to present something which can actually be competitive in the eyes of these experts.
Yeah.
And for that matter, you must have the researchers on board with you when crafting the text. So yes, there are always timing issues, there are pressures, but we have already developed a method of streamlining the process, making sure that we reach the deadline with no extra pressure on hand.
Yeah. And you know what? I talked to different consultants. I already talked to a handful, and there's a big difference. What is a baseline is that everybody's busy to different degrees, and they need to deal with that. Everybody needs to deal with that somewhere, one way or the other. But there's a big difference between what I, for instance, was through when I was a private consultant, had to deal with, and what I hear how others manage it. So, but I'm very happy that you managed to do a proper, solid work for your clients with these things, because it's very important. No,
Sure.
it's just just a side comment. Yoram, let's get at it.
Sure.
So let's hit the deep content here, because you have some very nice points here. So let's just start off with the first one, adjusting the narrative to the target.
Mm-hmm. Which is the selected grants. And this is an important thing. Let's start with that, because there is a variety of grants, and not all the grants are the same, and not all the grants may match what you want to achieve. And on the other hand, not any project can be competitive with all, in all grants. Meaning, the first match that we need to do is to match the right grant to the project. Just for example, I will take the simple ones. Let's consider on one hand a basic research project on one hand, and on the other hand a highly applicative one. If we put it on the TRL scale, just for proportion, we're talking about the first one is a low TRL project, and the second one is a high TRL project. Clearly, we are not going to address them to the same grants. The first one we can take to either ERC or the EAC Pathfinder on one hand, and the other one we'll take to any of the grants under Pillar 2, for example, or EAC Transition or EAC Accelerator, for example. So that's the first thing. Make sure that you got the right orientation here. And in that note, you just need to mention the issue of the bottom-up grants, like the EAC Pathfinder, because there is a tendency or a common thing that we see that people are looking at the full program and they say, we didn't find any topic that matches our project.
Yeah.
And then they go to the open one, but not always it's going to work, because the Pathfinder has its own specific rules and you need to comply with.
Yeah, and sometimes it's you try to fit the square into the circle, right? So it might fit with. I've been doing a lot. Everybody who's been a consultant has been. You have a client coming with something they want to do, and then it fits the live program, the content, and what they want to do, also the size of the consortium. But then they would need, say, a partner structure that doesn't fit with the live program. Then you go somewhere else. Then you go to, okay, so you have Horizon, but then for instance, the funding doesn't work if it's a university for life, for instance. If it's lower funded, 55%, they say, no, we cannot. Then you go somewhere else and you try to see, and then you find Horizon maybe Europe in the strategic ones. But then there's an issue with the strategic text, that and then if it doesn't fit with the EIC, the SME part, then you have the ERC, which might be too research heavy, so it can be quite a jungle. That's why you have consultants.
I agree, and definitely the first orientation is very important, because what we know is that if you choose the wrong grant, meaning a grant that does not match the objectives or the mission statement of the grant, etc., you are really likely to fail. That's the basic thing here.
No.
The opposite, of course, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to win, but definitely you will have better chances if you select the right grant.
I think, but I guess the main message from both of us should be that they should stay close to their idea. Keep the heart of the idea. Don't run after the money because of there's a funding. It's more important that you stay true to what you want to do. And then there's always something coming up, a national funding scheme, or you can always find one way or the other to deal with it.
I agree, because in most cases, simply it's going to fail. It's not going to work. And I actually I have a funny anecdote about 2-3 years ago, where a VP research of one of the universities called me and say, "Hey, I have a problem," because apparently there was another consultant who managed to prepare a project proposal in one of the faculties with the researchers over there, and they won. They got a grant. But then, looking at what they wrote in the application and the specific grant that they got, they realized that they cannot execute it. So he said, "I have a problem. I have a grant in hand which I cannot actually execute."
And then they start to hate it, because they have hours they have to execute, and the project they have to execute.
It caused a lot of issues, and there is the issue of reputation. You don't want to mess with that.
No.
So definitely a thing to keep in mind.
But so if we just zoom in a little bit again on the headline for this part, so adjusting the narrative to the target. So what we mean here, well, what you mean here, and I think is that you should stay close to your technology idea, no matter which grant you identify. But there are different ways of presenting things.
Correct. Yeah. And in that sense, we start from the top. When presenting this, you need to keep in mind what is the mission statement of the grant. That's the first thing to look at.
Yeah.
Because each grant, it has a mission statement. There are policies behind it. There was a lot of work done beforehand, to the extent of 1 or 2 or 3 years before the topic was published.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to realize that they are expecting you to apply to something which complies with their policies and with the mission statement of the specific grant. So when studying this, when trying to adjust your narrative to this the targeted grant, that's the first thing to look at, the policies and the mission statement.
And here I can refer back to my episode on impact that I did, Impact 2.1, I did with 2 old colleagues of mine, where she very clearly said, my old colleague Melanie Büscher, it's the commission's why.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the commission's why. And there you need to read these things. Absolutely correct. Mission statement or any... you don't have to read all policy documents coming out from the commission, but at least you need to go, because they have them presented quite... Also briefly, you have resumes of these things, and you can find them through the work programs. There are links to these things. So inform yourself.
Correct. And I fully agree. We're not going to discuss the impact today, but I fully agree with that. And just to keep in mind, pretty much any company or any academic coming in the door says something that there is kind of an underlying message saying, I have something novel to present, which is going to solve a problem, and it's the best possible thing, meaning the impact is there already. That's their always original message.
Yeah.
But we need to refine that, because I don't expect you to change the world now. I want to make sure that you comply with what the European Commission is looking for.
Yeah.
So your impact eventually, and this is where we start off with that, should be in line with that.
Yeah.
And then we move on to, let's say we get into a higher resolution, meaning we need to look at the goals and the expectations of the specific grant and specific topic. If you are addressing one of the topics in Pillar 2, for example, they have a lot of information available over there. And you need to read it through and make sure that you check all the marks over there. I can tell you from experience that if you read a specific topic and you say, I can actually answer few of the things that they are asking for here, it's not going to be good enough. You need to present a project which eventually answers to all the goals and expectations of the topic. And your narrative should be in line with that. When thinking about how to craft your narrative, use the language, use the words, and answer to what they are asking for.
Yeah, and what I always did, I worked with in teams. You know, we did this this creative part in the beginning where you have to calibrate the idea on the on-site with what you're writing up against, and making sure that you speak you calibrate the language between the two so they kind of fit, and understand where do we have to develop some extra little corners together with the partners, because they are expecting that also from this call. You know, you have the main thing fine, but you also need some other elements. So group work, teamwork. You know, I have a workshop sort of. I did it online always with, if need be, with the core partners and a colleague, where we simply, brainstormed for a couple of hours, put things into boxes, already starting to forming the work package structure through this kind of creative process, to kind of making sure you tick the boxes, and also make the client understand, the idea owner, what they have to calibrate up against for the specific grant. How do you work with this?
Actually, this is a very interesting thing, because whenever you work with a team, consortium, you get the different voices, different inputs, and the different nature of organizations, and they work differently, and they have different point of view. If you put on the same consortium people from the academia and then someone from the industry, usually they are not going to be on the same page originally. No. So what we do, we are approaching this in the following manner. We take the mission statement, or the topic description, for that matter, of the targeted grant that we want to apply to, and we break it down to functions, meaning we isolate from the text what are the exact functions that the project is expecting to have. Instead of discussing partners or individuals, we are starting to discuss functions, because at the end of the day, these collaborative projects, this is a kind of artificial entity that must eventually produce something. Yes, it's a collection of partners, but it's not a collection of separate tasks. It should work in harmony. So we start off by saying, here is the list of functions. And now we are discussing with the different partners who can fulfill each of the functions. And some of them, of course, will be kind of a cooperation between several partners. But we keep the discussion at that level throughout the, let's say, the brainstorming, and later on paper, in the document.
It's a good way, because you secure that you cover the core requirements, so to say.
And
from the beginning.
and I'm putting them on the same page because each of one of them, they have their own agenda. They are coming with their background and their organization or entity agenda. If I do it like that, if I manage to recruit them and make sure that they are on board with this function structure, and they start thinking like someone who actually fulfill a function, I get them to discuss at a different level. And that way I manage to kind of streamline the messages.
It's always interesting to hear how people work with these creative processes, because it's not just because they have their own interest or their own, their own perception, industry or research or NGO, whatever, but it's also a matter of making everybody understand what it is the input needs to be, understanding that the why of the commission, so to say, and getting them all as good as you can as a consultant, understanding, and that can sometimes be very difficult. Even to the very end of towards submission, some people, they haven't really understood. They still fight for own interest. Sometimes you have the ones that really fight for their own interest, which sometimes can make things a little lengthy.
Yeah, I agree. And then and definitely in these scenarios, you start getting all these kind of texts that you don't know what to do with them because you're not on the same page. And it's very hard to process them into the proposal.
I think we cover quite well this part of the topic. So the sort of the starting phase of attacking these things. Now, do you have anything else to add on?
Yeah, one important thing here is the issue of recycling, especially with the academia. We see that quite often. People
they're used to it.
Yeah, they are recycling their application all the time.
Because they use with papers. They keep reproduce, and then they add a little bit of extra research from the last year to an older. Yeah. That's. Yeah.
So especially with these grants, it's a very bad practice. Especially, keep in mind you have only one chance to get the first impression right with the reviewers, and this is the excellence chapter, which does that. And you want to engage them. And if you are recycling something from a different grant or even from a paper, academic paper, in most cases it's not adjusted to what these reviewers are expected to read here. And we see this quite often. And this is a bad practice, which it's important to raise a red flag and say, don't do that. Simply don't do that.
Yeah, it's extremely widespread in the Pillar 2 segment.
Not only that, in ERC as well, we see that quite often.
I can tell you, so now I laughed of the researchers, but I can reassure you that they're coming from a very large consultancy company. It was it's just a resubmission. It would even affect the price we would offer to clients. Would get a cheaper price normally if it was a resubmission. But it's not. You know what? I've seen colleagues having to pick up these kind of leads. And just because it's the same work, but where the offer that was presented to the client was maybe half price, something like this, but it's the same kind of amount of work you need to do. You can copy, but the problem is okay, of course you can copy some of the descriptions of the technology and so on, but you still need to adjust to the code text, new code text you do up against, and it is experienced evaluators, they see right through it.
I agree. As an evaluator, I can tell you it's very simple to detect that. And we are not doing that. There is no resubmission in our company, meaning people are coming for resubmission, but we always do all the work from the top. Exactly. With the specific new grant, new target in mind. even if it's ERC, which ERC is open, it's completely open, it's unstructured, and there are no topics over there.
Yeah.
Even there, if it's a resubmission, it can be a resubmission year after year. We refer to this from the top. We simply do everything from the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's about recycling.
All right. Let's move on.
Novelty?
Yeah.
Let's talk about novelty.
Let's talk about novelty.
Yeah.
But now let's just try to in this frame that you have put. So you say, so you have a client came with an idea. So you started with what we just went through. You check the grant, you find out goals, you start to shape up the skeleton structure of the excellence section. So novelty, Yoram.
Right. Now, most of the grants, they're looking for novelty. Not all of them, but most of them. Mm-hmm. So that's a common and very important topic to address. And a first thing to keep in mind is the following. There are two things, actually, that we need to discuss. The first one is that pretty much anyone that applies, it's the original declaration is that what they're doing is novel. However, we know from experience that it's not always the case. And sometimes you need to face reality. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing to address. And the other thing is how you present it in the excellence, because at the end of the day, the excellence chapter is actually about how you convince them that what you're doing is excellent, meaning you bring real novelty here.
This is, it's this idea. They have to say, wow, when they read the excellence. Wow, that's a great idea. That's oh my goodness, can you do that? That's what you need. Can you do that?
Exactly. You are looking for this wow effect.
Yeah.
And trust me, as an evaluator, if I see the wow, it doesn't really matter what else is written in the application.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, in one briefing I had in the European Commission many years ago, actually a project officer told us explicitly, he said, if you believe that this is a real novel application, I want to see very high marks. But if you don't believe in the novelty over there, I want to see very low marks, because I want to make sure that it's completely off the chart. It's not even close.
People, are you paying attention out there? This is very important, what my dear guest is saying right now.
Yeah. So looking for this wow effect. So the thing here is that the first thing, we need to make sure that what you're doing is actually novel. And for that matter, you need to convince throughout the text that you are aware of what's going on out there, meaning you know what is the state of the art, and to present it. Now, we are not looking for a, let's say, in-depth literature review. You don't have the room for that. You need to be very clear with your messages. The state of the art must be in full context with what you want to do and the grant expectations. So you need to be very clear on that and don't go into lengthy text over there. A very important remark here, especially for academics, is that the state of the art must also refer to the industry. And this is something that we see with many academics, that they actually fail to do that, or they simply ignore the industry. And there are areas where the industry is actually leading the technology. There are areas where the industry is much more advanced than the academia. Mm-hmm. So you must acknowledge that. So the first thing is, I'm not going to go too much into that because it's very hard to assess novelty without a specific case in front of us.
I think it's absolutely clear and cannot underline enough what Yoram says is. Of course, you need to make sure that you go through patent searches, you go through the research that has been done, research database, all these things. That needs to be, so you have different databases with these things. European patent database, there's a US, couple of US databases as well. I think there's even a world. So that you need You need to, and you also have with paper search engines and so on, which most researchers would know where to look. You need to get it straight. That's no. It's just this is. There's no way. You have to.
You cannot.
Both industry and research.
Exactly. And now we move into how you actually present it in the text.
Yeah.
And the thing here is that you must go through several steps here, which they must be there. And we see many applicants that fail to do it right. The first thing is you must crystallize the knowledge gap, meaning you have the state of the art, but you need to say exactly what is the knowledge gap or technological gap that you want to address. And of course, the size here matters, the nature of the gap matters, and you should demonstrate how your project, your research, your development can close this gap. And it should be in the context of the grant expectations. Okay, you need to have both. It's the gap that you want to address, and it should be very clear to the reviewers. We see from experience that many actually fail to clearly identify this gap. They can say present it in very general lines or not speak specifically about this knowledge gap. And by the way, the message "no one has done this before" is not a knowledge gap. Okay, this is.
I wonder how many times I wrote that.
That's not. It's a motivation. It's a motivation message, but it's not a knowledge gap. Knowledge gap should be in the form someone has tried to do that before, or they reach a certain point, but from this point onwards, there is no proof of concept. There is no evidence that something is working, or someone tried and failed, and here's the reference for the failure.
Yeah.
You need to establish the knowledge gap. And it's okay to say no one else tried it as a motivation for you to do that. But for crystallizing the knowledge gap, it's not enough.
I think it's just have to it's a matter of saying, okay, this is where that's the level we are now. What this technology, what this solution does, it takes this a notch further in this direction. And because we have developed this technology, because we developed this process here, it is something that changes the level of the state of the art, because it changes the boundaries of what you can do within this technology, because that would be a gap description and then of course you need to explain the technology behind it, but not too long.
No, you don't have the room for that. The page limits are shrinking. So.
It's like in a couple of framework programs, they will have 5-page proposals.
That's correct. So you need to be very focused on that. So we said that you need to crystallize the knowledge gap. You need to make sure it's in line with the mission statement of the grant and the expectations of the specific target, meaning the specific topic that you are applying to. But it should be also linked to the impact, meaning, is it worth it? Mm-hmm. Is it really something that it's in line with the expectations of the European Commission on one hand and the market or the scientific community or humanity? Is it worth it? You need to link it to the impact. So when presenting a novelty, you have to go through all these steps. And the closing step here has to do with the methodology that you're going to use in order to close this gap. But
this is where it gets tricky, right? When you need to write the poetry, as I call it, because here it gets quite technical, and it's the longest part of the excellence section, as far as I remember.
Correct.
Because here you explain what you want with your project.
Correct.
This is the project description, the technical project description, so to say. And here, I guess that you, just as well as me, as any consultant has been sitting with this can be a very, very tough part of a proposal to make nice.
Correct. And yeah, definitely. And keep also in mind that it's the bridge to the implementation later on. We are not going to discuss the implementation today, but your methodology section should eventually correspond to the implementation. And the typical mistake that we see is that many applicants, especially in these collaborative projects, when they reach us at the beginning saying, hey, we have a consortium already, and this is the topic we want to apply to, and we already have the work packages, meaning we already thought about the work packages, because work packages is something tangible. It's something easy to refer to. So it's the first thing that they are approaching. Mm-hmm. However, they fail to actually meet the challenge of presenting the overall methodology that you want to implement in the project that should eventually be manifested in the work packages. They are going the other way around.
Yeah, and we are digging very geeky and nerdy. We're digging into the proposal writing, different schools of proposal writing. The proposals I've been sitting with, it would be somehow done in a pendulum, so there would be a work package, the work package groups, partners in the work package, they would have running meetings on developing the structure in the work package they were dealing with, and parallel with that, they would give input to the excellence and impact sections.
Yeah, that's happened quite a lot.
But and I've seen processes also where they would write the work package descriptions where the excellence section would come in later, for instance, and it's different from consultant to consultant how they work. I sat with very few proposals fully myself. So, and to tell the truth, I think I actually started with the excellence section back then when I was doing this kind of work myself only, and then I would move into shaping up the work package descriptions afterwards. But I don't know. So you take first and build up the excellence section, and then you slowly build up the work package description, so on.
If we're starting from scratch, yes, but in many cases with clients, we get already initial version of the work packages, and then we need to craft the methodology. And in that sense, I want to remind you the issue of the functions that I mentioned earlier. So we push them to think of the project as a set of functions, and then it makes it easier for them to write or let's say contribute to the methodology section, and then go back and revisit the work packages while having the functions in mind all the time. It helps them to do that.
Yeah, you got a good framework approach with doing it like that. It helps. No.
And by the way, this takes me to the next bullet here.
Good. Then we're bridging into your next bullet, so distinguishing the what from the how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is another big thing that we see, especially when writing the excellence section. We distinguish between the what and the how. The what is the what exactly you want to do in the project, unlike how you want to achieve that. Meaning the what is the conceptual thing and the how is the operational level.
Yeah.
In the excellence section, we want to speak to the reviewers. We want to present to the reviewers what you want to achieve in the project. The how is down the line. In the methodology, it starts in the methodology and later on in the work packages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the typical thing that we see, and it's a typical failure point in many applications, is actually mixing the two right from the start, from the objectives, right from let's say the first declarations about the project in the excellence section. And I can tell you from the other side, from the reviewer point of view, as I said, I want to know first what the project is about. I'm less interested at the beginning in understanding how you're going to achieve that. And think about it from a very rational point of view. Since the reviewers are experts in the field, if they understand exactly what you want to do and what is your novelty, the methodology and the actual plan, they will be interested in that. But they can very easily imagine or connect the dots for themselves and realize how it can be done. By nature, it can be a less competitive factor here. I'm not underestimating this. I still think that you need to invest in the implementation, and we have a lot of information to put over there. But if you present a project in the excellence section with mixing the two without conveying a clear messages just about the concept or the conceptual aspects, you may lose the attention of the reviewer here. Yeah. And this is the thing that we need to be careful with.
Yeah, it's because it's what happens is in a proposal preparation process is often that even the straightest ones that has an overview can sometimes get a little bit caught in the nature or the of that proposal and get into a where you get a little blind. You get a little speed blind when you sit with that. You fail. You suddenly start to miss some of these. You miss the. You start to lose the ability to zoom out, and making sure that you are getting the concept right in each section. And it's correct. It's yeah.
It comes from this very human and natural thing of thinking about the tangible things that you can do. And as you said, you need to zoom out at the beginning, at the excellence section. You need to zoom out and get the concept right. It should be in line with the expectation of the grant, the mission statement of the grant, connect to the impact later on. It's all on a very conceptual high level. And that's why we try to distinguish between the two and make sure that at least at the opening text, you're going to discuss only the what and not the how.
Yeah.
So that's about that. And then it leads me to this reference point of the implementation, which we already mentioned. So we're not going to get deep into that, but think of the application as kind of a roller coaster, or let's say a slide that the reviewers should go through. If you manage to get their attention right at the beginning, at the excellence section, they are going to enjoy the ride later on in the implementation section and the impact section. And that's our goal here.
That's, again, I can only refer to again, Marie Proteau from the excellence chapters I had in the timelines. This. I said you need to make the first 2 pages as sexy and appealing as possible, because when I read it, if I get bored, it affects my my perception for the rest, and your proposal is gone.
I agree. I totally agree.
You cannot drag me back in because I have to read maybe 10 more proposals. So it has to be. It's so extremely nice. So she underlined it very much. That you cannot spend too much time on the 2 first pages, so to say, making sure that they are strong and appealing and so on.
I totally agree. And there is no second chance of making the first impression. And we need to keep in mind this issue of emotional feedback, which can be a conscious thing or an unconscious thing with the reviewers. Yeah. And I believe that anyone that ever reviewed anything, any paper, any document, any application can relate to that. When you start reading an application, you get a sense at the beginning whether you like it or not. And again, it can be a conscious thing or an unconscious thing. Mm-hmm. And if you like it, you will start looking for evidence to support a positive feedback. And if you dislike it from the beginning, that your tendency will be to look for negative points. And that's why the opening texts are very important. The very first page or two, as you said, and definitely you need to avoid any boring things, any long backgrounds, and speak to the point. Make sure that you are conveying a clear, excellent, novel message with your application over there. It's very important.
This is why it's so bloody difficult to get a grant sometimes, because you can imagine, you see all the efforts that the immense amount of efforts that are being put into these things, and then this is the human psychology from the people who read it. You can have the nicest proposal, but if it doesn't have the right appeal from the beginning, then tough luck.
Correct. Yeah, I can tell you about myself. It was very, very clear to me. Many applications, whether I like it or not from the beginning, it's really affected me. I did my work. I fulfilled all the information. I gave the marks. But if I didn't like the application, I didn't like the application. And it showed.
Yeah. Get to the point.
Yeah, I'm trying.
No, guys, that's a point on the bullet list. It's not me. It's not me telling Yoram off. So the next bullet point on Yoram's rundown for me here. Let's get to the point.
Exactly. So as we said, yes, you need to get to the point and avoid this boring stuff. And then two more things to discuss here. The first one is the logic jumps, and this is another thing usually stemming from recycled grants or patchwork of collaborative work without a main editor. And these logic jumps are simply things that are in the text, but they are not streamlined, meaning you start reading the application. Let's say you understand what the project is about, you understand novelty, and let's say you are already on board and you like your application. And then somewhere down the line, page 5 or 6 or 7, you simply read something new, which the text did not refer to earlier on. And that's a bad point, because it may ruin the overall picture, and it may also convey a message that you didn't really plan the project, and you didn't really do the proofreading as required. And it's all kind of negative messages here.
Yes, so, and the problem here is that it doesn't necessarily mean that a crappy work has been done with that proposal. It's just a little sloppiness with the diligence, so to say, on making sure that you carve out, because it's like, for me, sometimes you took texts, but I would read it through, right? But I can also reassure you, for dissemination stuff like this, I am guilty as charged for copy pasting a lot of stuff there. But for the excellence part, it's much more difficult, and that's I have not been resubmitting proposals where I had to do the excellence part. So actually, I cannot really say if I did that. But you might receive text from the partners that they have used in a formal proposal. But it's just, if you're the first one to look at it again, then at least you have a chance to make sure it's not happening again. If you're doing the second or third resubmission, there you really run into troubles if you don't pay attention.
That's true. And for that matter, I strongly recommend that there is going to be a single main author or single main editor for the entire text. Someone that's going to be her or his role to make sure that the text speaks a single unified voice, and there are no logic jumps or no surprises in the text for the reviewers.
Yeah,
that's important.
I can recommend it as well. I can tell you that we didn't have the time to do this.
Time. It takes time. I agree.
We didn't have it because of the business model we were rolling with. We were sitting with 3-4 proposals in teams, but I would have 3-4 proposals, for instance, for each round, call round, and then my colleague that I was sitting with on each of these would also have be involved in anything from 2 to 4 proposals at the same time. And you know what? It might be good for business, but I can tell you that it's not good for psychological and mental health for the persons that are doing it. That's one thing. That's a point that I'm making a lot out of in this podcast. That's one thing. And the second point is that you start to get tired and lose these kind of things when you move towards it. No matter how much my old managers and so, no, it's a professional company and our consultants are professional. They're also human beings. It's exactly what you also are insisting on here, Yoram. Human beings, if you put too much pressure, if they have too much to do, they start to be to miss glitches in the matrix, so to say. Yeah.
Right. I agree. The last point here in this getting to the point thing is what we refer to as feeding the reviewer, meaning eventually the reviewers in most of the grants, they have a set of questions that they need to answer in their evaluation form. They have a system, electronic system, in which they need to fill in their feedback. And you don't get the full list of questions from the system, but in most grants you do get, let's say, the general lines or the top level questions that the reviewers should refer to. You get the questions for their evaluation form, although the form in their system is more elaborated than that. But you get a sense of what they need to learn from application. And when structuring the full proposal, but especially the excellence part, you need to make sure that they read these key messages to answer the key questions. So either use boldface typeface, or put messages in boxes, or make sure that you have subheadings according to what they are expected. For example, if we talk about the novelty, if we talk about the novelty, we talked about how to present novelty right. So you can say, here is the knowledge gap, and mark it down. And simply say, this is how I identify the knowledge gap. And then next step is how I'm going to approach that. And so on and so on.
And so I can tell you and the listeners that it's very common that you forget some of these things from the template. Because they put it, but it's and then just then 2 days before submission, oh my goodness, then I need a different kind of presentation. Or what's that table? If you, for instance, by accident use an old template or template that doesn't fit with the code that you're using, and then you suddenly realize what's that table they're asking for? Then you suddenly have to collect data from partners 48 hours before submission.
Yeah, and that for that matter, our practice is actually to have two things in front of you all the time. The first one is the topic description. If you're aiming at the Horizon Europe collaborative projects, and our recommendation to the people working on that and our internal practice is simply to read it every day you touch the text, meaning make sure that you get the right orientation all the time and you do not deviate, which is also something that happens in these processes. And the other thing is we keep the comments in the template also on the paper all the time until the final editing. So we have them over there and make sure that we are covering everything there.
It's a nightmare of a document towards the end with the comments. So you do yourself a favor when you work with it that you can cut off these comments in Word in the viewing because I get a headache when you get everything there. So but I can tell you what I often did, which is the total opposite of what we are recommending people to do here. What I often did because I'm not an experienced proposal writer. I'm a facilitator, so I was helping a lot with the shaping from the beginning, getting the consortium on board, facilitating meetings, and making sure the proposal writer would have the red carpet rolled in front of him or her, so they could do the content stuff while I was making sure that these things were happening. So towards submission, if I was involved, I took old proposals and look, what do we need to have here? But that's what you don't need to do. That's where you get into troubles with the tables. You need this and this and this table, and then you take the boxes, and then oh my goodness, then you no. Don't do this at home.
Yeah,
it'll give you a heart attack.
Right.
Are we through your bullets? I think we are.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's about the excellence sections.
And actually, we have it's acceptable the timing we have here. It's the same as it's my guest episodes. They always tend to be around an hour and 15-20 minutes. It's difficult to do this kind of podcast, the kind of content that I have. The nature of the podcast, you cannot discuss these things in 20 minutes.
No,
it's not possible.
Yeah, I agree.
No, my last segment that I always, most of the time anyways, try to keep in my podcast, the toughest challenge. The Grand. What do you consider the toughest challenge?
With unfolding the excellence section?
Yeah.
It's in most cases is actually getting the let's say crystallizing the message of what the project is about and the novelty that you are presenting. And actually, I have a very recent example, a project that I've worked on in the past few weeks. And it's a project which it's eventually an engineering project, designing a new apparatus. But it is doing that to serve a specific function in a very, very exciting settings. The settings is I'm not going to get into the full description of the project because of all kinds of reasons, but I can tell you that it's kind of the very large research settings in astrophysics, like the CERN on one side and the gravitational waves detectors on the other side. This size of research.
Yeah,
and it took, I think, 3 or 4 rounds with the researcher on the excellence part to isolate what exactly is the engineering challenge that this guy is going to have from the full story that he came in with, which is the great settings, this great astrophysics settings that is really very exciting. It involves the Earth and the Moon and a lot of very intriguing messages and a lot of stories that has to do with impact, but not with the excellence.
Uh-huh.
And it really took a long time with the researcher to actually get the right message out.
I need some good content actually here in the end. Yoram, so how did you do that?
Well, I had to be very patient at first.
Yeah.
I simply keep on questioning him because the original, the text, and let's say in these 3 revisions before we actually managed to crystallize something, was he pretty much had all the mistakes here. He was confusing the what and the how. He was putting impact into the excellence part. The novelty was unclear at all.
Mm-hmm.
He actually provided a long background text. I think in the first version, only on page 6, he started talking about what he's going to do in his project. Up until project 6, it was a very nice story to read, but it was simply irrelevant. So I started questioning. I was questioning everything over there. I was trying to figure out, and at the beginning it was hard to detect, but I was questioning pretty much everything that I thought that the project is about in the text, and interviewed him on that. And it took a while to actually to unfold this.
So you interviewed him, then you went back home, so to say. You calibrated and tried to understand. Then you got more questions. Then you had a new meeting, asking those questions, getting closer and closer to the core. Okay. Did you also do desktop research on the science itself?
Yeah, but it was very hard at this point because it's a very specific niche.
So you need to be a tough researcher yourself to understand.
Exactly. And another challenge that was it was part of that. It's he had contradicting messages and discrepancies because you recycle texts. It was kind of on page 2 there was, let's say, one equation, and on page 4 a similar equation but with different numbers or different, let's say, factors that weren't numbers. And I was trying to understand the link between the two. And it took me a while, and only after I questioned him to realize that it's the very same thing, but he took it from 2 different sources. So this is the kind of thing that simply I had to take a deep dive into that and to question a lot. And to realize, I can tell you that once I realized what the novelty is about and what the project is about, it was actually very different from my original perception from the first reading of the text.
You're an engineer, right?
Actually, I'm not.
No. But that's a good example. Me neither, but I think you've been spending more years on this than I've. So this is, dear listeners, this is an example of someone who has worked with this for many, many years, meaning that Yoram, my dear friend here, he's able to dig into a technology that he has not have any education in at all, but he can still understand by digging into the asking the right questions. It's just what do you say, the mark of a good consultant.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, you're welcome. And that's a good note to end on. I think we're done.
Great, it was a pleasure.
Very nice to have you on board. Now, what I'm going to, I always like to have an open window when I end with my first guest to have a next episode. And actually, I could use someone with knowledge of the ERC to go through that program and presenting that a little bit in a couple of episodes. Dear listeners, thank you for listening to the end. I sincerely hope that this is something that has given you a lot of food for thought and critical mass for the proposals that a lot of you are preparing out there, important points of view and things and what do you say, red flags you need to be aware of when you develop these things. So just outro, yes, by all means do subscribe to the podcast. It helps me, your dear spare time podcast developer here. It is a spare time initiative, but the best way to build a podcast is to get people onto the email list. So please, by all means, subscribe if you like what I'm doing here, and check out the website. It keeps building up. There's an episode each week, so it keeps growing. So, Yoram, thanks again.
Thank you.
And to you all, bye.
Bye-bye.
The Grand. You have been listening to The Grand, the EU funding